Call to order to this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. We'll open with an invocation by Ms. Binder and a pledge of allegiance by Mr. Miller. Please all rise.
Please, Lord, grant us the wisdom to make the right decisions for the county, our constituents, and everyone involved in King George, like our staff and family members who visit our residents. So in the Lord's name I pray, and amen.
Amen. Mr. Miller, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
I don't know that it's an amendment, but I did want to point out that this room is not available on Thursday for your budget meeting, so we do need to have this in the company one at 6 p.m. So
Understood. So when we come to the point for adjournment, that
would be, yes,
thank you for the heads up.
but no other amendments.
Thank you. All right, I'll open the floor for public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. And when you come up, please state your name and your address. All right, we're open for anyone who'd like to address the board.
Hi, my name's Julianne. I live on Village Lane over here in King George. I'm very proud of my neighborhood. I love it there. I was wondering if you guys were proud of your neighborhoods too. It was recently brought to my attention today that on the King George County website, they have plans for the Chick-fil-A. You guys all see this? Plans for the Chick-fil-A. But you know what it's missing? Pyramid Health Care. Why aren't we proud enough to put a drug rehab that services criminals on here? Did anybody ever think of that? Because it's not needed here in our area. Put it somewhere else. We all understand that people need help. But in the area that has been picked, there are a lot of things that are wrong with it. We recently went in and got the plans. And I was just curious, again, on the plans it says 38 employees. When Pyramid Healthcare was here, they're going to hire over 120 and have over 50 people working at a time. Also, it says that it's registered here, and on all the plans, it's a nursing home facility. I have a problem with that because they said it was for a hospital. A hospital has a larger rate of people, it has a larger rate of rooms, it has a larger rate of use. So now with all the utilities and everything, you're gonna deem this as a nursing home instead of a hospital. I'd like that to be looked at. Also, it says there's 306 vehicles per day on this road. 306 vehicles during the day on the road off of Owens Drive, which is already congested. If you're gonna try to go to work at a reasonable time during the AM, you can sit in that area for at least 3 or 4 traffic lights. So is King George going to increase that road so Pyramid Healthcare can actually bring their 306 vehicles per day in and out of there? And as we heard, that's not going to include the cab or the Ubers that are going to have to pick up the people who decide to leave without a ride. I don't know what else we can do or what else we can say. We keep coming in here every week, week after week. We appreciate your help and we know you're behind us. Let us know what we can do to help you guys, because we're going to uncover a whole bunch of stuff, because if you give us enough time, we're going to keep digging and show that King George is a community that does not want this in our backyard. The reason why we don't want this is because we love our neighborhood. There's no fence. There's nothing that is going to support us in our neighborhood with this. We asked them what they're going to do for us, and they said they're going to give us jobs. My people have jobs. My neighborhood has jobs. We all have jobs. Where are they going to get 200 people to work in this rehab?
Kim Clark, Fairfax Drive. King George, Virginia. I think it's been a little over 6 weeks since I've made this initial inquiry. I come before you once again to say that I have not received any form of documentation with regards to the yes that Dahlgren can support Pilgrim Pyramid with regards to the water usage. I don't know if the supervisors are aware, or as I checked last week, the last published audit for water usage for the community is dated on the website from 2018. There's no way for me to cross-reference, proof, analyze any statement, any numbers being given with regards to the water usage that Pyramid said they're going to use. Mr. Miller, we are in agreement. We would love to meet with you, but before we meet with you, we need documentation. We need to read it. We would like to cross-reference it so we can sit down and truly have a conversation intelligently with the numbers in front of us to support what has been previously approved. To my shocking knowledge, I want to know what was given to Pyramid to even justify them saying that we could indeed support them. I'm not sure if the vision is being taken into place with regards to the business development that is already happening and taking place already in Dahlgren. And I just would like to know and have that so we can review it, and then we will then come and sit down and meet with you. Once again, thank you so much for your time.
Kim Dodge, 6150 McCarthy Drive. Now, I live in Hop Yard, so this rehab does not affect me, but the traffic over there is a problem with the Navy base, and it gets worse and worse, the traffic. So I see the point with the traffic and I have not been following this, and I guess it's a drug rehab. My question is, are these people that this place is going to service from our community of King George County, or is it throughout the state of Virginia where instead of putting them in prison, we're going to help them, which we should do, in a rehab center? But are they just filling in, coming from wherever, and we bringing these people into King George County? And my concern is when they can just leave, they are here in King George County, okay? They have been relocated from wherever people wanted to get rid of them and put them over here. And I know this is probably a government thing and they're getting government funding. So, I mean, I don't know because I've not been following this, but I don't think the center is set up for our area. I think it's for the whole state of Virginia. I don't know. That's just a question you can answer for me after this. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Mr. Dines, do we have anyone online?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have two people. The
Okay.
first person is Anthony Stats.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, Anthony Stats, 9007 Clare Street. I usually do my public comments in person, but unfortunately I was unable to make it tonight. Looking at the budget, I've done a lot of research into the school board budget and a lot of different aspects of the current budget. And I think the Board of Supervisors needs to lay out a plan for the next 10 years of what this county will look like. I think a lot of people are scared and a lot of people just don't know of what's going on right now in this county and where are we projected to go if we continue on this path, and really laying out how we're going to tackle the mountain of debt we have, how we're going to tackle the service authority and the craziness that's going on over there. So I hope that the board will start laying out a future plan so we can inform citizens and make sure that they're truly understanding what's going on, because I think a lot of people are being left in the dark. And I hope that in the next coming months and next coming weeks, actually, as we have the discussion about the budget, people really look at the impact and understand that what is going on and why the school board is going to ask for a certain amount of money and why different departments are going to ask for a certain amount of money. I think it's good to inform the public and educate them on why certain things need certain funding and why we're at the stage we're at now. And I think it's a good opportunity for the public to learn, and it's a good opportunity for the board to educate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stats. Mr. Dons, you said there was another?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the next person is Lucas Adams.
Hello, am I coming through?
Go ahead.
This is Lucas Adams. I live at 7433 Longleaf Lane, King George, Virginia. I represent about 17 families who have moved into that new subdivision off Caledon Road. And we are currently trying to figure out how we can get, our HOA is basically treating us very poorly. And there is theoretically plans for another 60-ish lots to be placed in that subdivision. And the owner of those lots is charging each of the families, each of the households, their kind of proportion of HOA dues, even though we're not at 50% capacity. We're not able to basically have a vote because he controls the 60 lots compared to the 17 families that we have. And so he's basically charging us all of his expenses and with no plans to further develop and fill the community. So there doesn't really seem to be an end in sight as far as him gathering those dues, which there's a little obscurity there as far as what those are actually being used for. So I'm coming to the board to see what I can see if you can point me in the direction of a resource that can help me out. Like I said, I represent about 17 families in that community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else, Mr. Dines?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone from the board have any correspondence to enter into the record? Okay. In that case, I will close public comment and we will move on to reports from members of the boards. Ms. Binder.
All right, I want to start off by the last caller was on there. I know this is Mr. Collins' district, and he could probably give us a little more information when his turn comes. But I just want to make sure, I'm not sure exactly what department we could assist this gentleman with, so I just wanted to put in your wheelhouse if there is a department that we might be able to steer him with for assistance.
So if it's an HO, did you have something you want to add, Mr. Collins?
Right, I just wanted to put that out there. And then concerning the next one on all of our folks that came to speak about Pyramid Healthcare, I've actually talked to quite a few of your neighbors who I know personally, who every time they see me, they ask me questions about Pyramid Healthcare. And we're going through the process. And one of the other questions I have for Mr. Miller and his staff is the paper that was brought up. I don't know what it's on. I've never seen it. So I'm wondering where some of the information is coming from, if there's an application with community development, because I haven't seen any of that information. And I know it's by right, so we don't ever see it, but I'm not sure. There seems to be some confusing information. So I'd just like maybe our staff to get a handle on where all this information is circulating from, so that when we do get asked questions, we can have some answers and dig deep, because the paper, I have no idea where it came from. So that's one other thing. I wanted to point out that Jaren Hayes stepped down from the FAMPO committee that she was on. So now we have no citizens in that role. I know that's a hard committee to fill, because King George is a non-voting member at FAMPO. So getting citizens, they don't feel like they really are heard on that committee because we don't have a vote. And with that being said, I wanted to bring up, I was at the last GWRC meeting with Ms. Kupka, and then I stayed for the FAMPO, since I'm on the FAMPO committee as a listener, basically. And I wanted to make sure that my colleagues, we had two presentations at FAMPO, and they were from a federal perspective, and it seems like there's a big push for regional transportation. And with that being said, that not cars off the road and more, I call it 15-minute cities is what it's called. But basically getting cars off the roads and creating communities that are drivable, walkable, and shoppable. And that projects that are coming down the pipe, like if we ask for a road project, that the federal government is looking for more matching county funds. And at GWRC, that was brought up that once again, the Fredericksburg Transportation Authority that was killed or tabled this time in the legislature, it's going to come back up because this is seen as one of the ways that you can have those matching funds. And, King George and Caroline especially have a unique perspective that we might not benefit from something like that. And our citizens, there's a tax involved to help support this transportation authority. So that things we need to have on our radar that are coming down the pike. So I just wanted to bring that up. At my Healthy Generations meeting, they were bringing up the discussion of a possibility of a regional citizen center instead of each locality having a citizen center, having a regional citizen center. Will they be able to provide more better transportation options to get there, maybe a hot meal and a better experience, and you can sort of a one-stop shop for everything a senior would need. I attended the regional Piedmont Science Fair, and it was at North Fork. I forget the rest of it, but it was a great technology park. I don't know if Mr. Miner has ever heard about it. It was pretty cool because I actually thought this would be neat in King George because it wasn't what you think of a technology park. It was several large office buildings, and they had a lot of businesses that were tied with UVA, but with the federal government and DOD. And they also rented out spaces for companies to use if they wanted to be hooked up to technology but didn't want an office space, and they had like an area for a secretary. And then they had a fitness center. They had a couple of restaurants. It was just an interesting tech park that, I thought of. That would be kind of a neat idea. But I wanted to congratulate all the science fair participants because some of their projects were really neat, and several of them where I wouldn't have thought of that, but I understand why it's important. And my daughter participated in it, and she had a great time talking to other friends. And some of the high school projects were even cooler. Unfortunately, King George did not participate in that one, but one boy built this small robot that he navigated through a maze, and that was pretty neat. And he designed it, I think it was like a spider. So, and then the last thing I wanted to mention was the community project information session that we had today with Representative Spanberger's office. And there's a lot of federal money. I know that the term used to be called earmarks, but now it's called community projects. So there's a lot of federal funds, and I'm going to reach out with a couple of ideas to our staff. And it's an opportunity for some federal funds for some items that we kind of need in the community. But this is a normal thing that the representatives reach out to their representatives in the local government to try to get projects submitted. The only problem is it's a 2-week window turnaround. So I know our staff will try really hard to put in some prioritize and give some good project ideas to that possibly we can get some funding for our constituents. So that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. It's good to see everyone out. So the Water Authority entered into a 3-year agreement that saddled us with a contract for in Bowdoin for 3 years. I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to that. That's going to put the authority, the Board of Supervisors, in a real predicament for 3 years. So we don't have any control for 3 years of the water. On a good note, the jail authority, I discussed with members of the board that our share this year will be the same as last year. So that's positive. It was, well, staffers going to pay an extra $750,000. All of them are paying more except for us this year, which is a good thing. Some of the public comments, pyramid, healthcare. Just so the folks know in the audience, your board, we're working on it. That's all I can say. I don't know what the result will be. Hopefully it can be something positive for the citizens of that area and the community. So the one comment about service in King George or state of Virginia for Pyramid, it's going to service anybody that gets in there. It's King George. I don't think you'll see a big representation of folks needing help to go into Pyramid. You'll probably see more out of state people than you will in state. So that was not a happy thing that we learned at the time when we got the information on Pyramid. I am interested in Julianne's document she had. I'd like to have a copy of that. You don't have to give it to me now. You don't have to give it to me. Don't approach the board. You can get it over there. Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, but there's rules, and being a former police officer, I do get really nervous when people start approaching. Okay. Mr. Stats spoke about a budget 10-year, about being in the dark. I understand what he's saying. Now, to the folks on Caledon with the HOA, I'm involved in HOA myself, and there's nothing really nice I could say about an HOA. But I've been in discussion with I don't know how many members of that community, and I've given them suggestions. I've referred them to the HOA law in Virginia statute to read that over. I've also referred them to the Ombudsman for the Homeowners Association, the state of Virginia, that they can be a resource. There is some what appears to be some shenanigans, and the Board of Supervisors doesn't have any control on a private HOA, but I hope that they can look into those options and go forth and to maybe help them out a little bit. And as far as the Regional Citizen Center, I kind of like what we got. So I don't know about the regional one. So that was just off the top of my head. I don't have any other information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Ms. Skupka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to everyone who came out this evening, whether you spoke or not. Thank you for being involved in our community. I see Ms. Dirtz let us off on public comment, and in our minutes that we're going to adopt, I would guess shortly, I had asked in my board report after the last time she was here and obtained consensus, unanimous consent from the entire board, consensus of the board to draft correspondence to Pyramid Healthcare regarding Ms. Dirt's unanswered questions. Has that correspondence gone to Pyramid Healthcare yet? Because she's still here asking the same questions.
I would have to ask Ms. Hall. Unfortunately, I don't have that to provide you, but I can find that out.
Okay, and if it has, can you please copy each member of the board?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Dirtz, we're trying to get you the answers to your questions. Ms. Clark, it is my understanding you just want a copy in advance of the water report. Is that what you're asking for? In advance, I do understand staff has been in correspondence with you to invite you to a meeting, but you want something ahead of time. Got it. Ms. Dodge, thank you for coming out and sharing your comment. Mr. Stats, thank you for your comments online. Mr. Adams, I have been working on your issue with another of your neighbors. He did send me a great deal of documentation with regard to your HOA. I reviewed it last week. I finally was able to ask a number of questions of our community development staff regarding the issue, and based on what they're telling me and based on what is in GIS, the roads in your development have not yet been turned over to become part of the state system, which means that I think we do have some leverage. So I would propose that Mr. Collins and I set up a meeting with your neighborhood so we could get together and discuss this. Does that work for you, Mr. Collins?
It does work. I've made that offer to many of those folks there. I've talked to them a lot by phone, but never, I told them we can meet anytime.
Why don't I'll email the gentleman I've been in touch with and copy you on that email, and we'll get together on this and see if we can push forward, because my understanding from staff also is that the development plan that was originally approved for the roads is so old, they're going to have to resubmit and update it. So there may be some assistance we can give the folks in that neighborhood. Thanks, Mr. Collins. Let's see. And then the other, just a couple small things. Saturday, March 4th, I attended with Mr. Granger the grand open ribbon cutting of Highmark Brewery in King George. Congratulations to the business owners. And I want to shout out to Mr. Nick Miner, our Director of Economic Development, because the owner mentioned that it would not have been possible without his assistance. So thank you very much to you and your staff for your work on that. And then later that evening, I attended the Visualize and Rise Dinner Dance fundraiser at the Citizen Center. Reminder, Friends of the Rappahannock will host a litter cleanup event with county staff on March 25th from 9 a.m. to noon. You can sign up on their website. And one last thing, King George Department of Social Services Family Day and King George VFW Sergeant Nicholas C. Mason Post 12202 will co-host its second annual post-birthday celebration on May 6th. At Sealston Sports Complex from 2 to 7. You can contact either of those organizations to become a vendor or sponsor, and hopefully we'll have some folks come out. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka. Mr. Stonehill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for everybody coming out. Certainly nice to see more people than an empty room. Julianne, we're still working. You know, there's not a whole lot we can do, but we're trying. And thanks for, getting all your information and digging on that as well. Ms. Clark, just, whenever the staff can get you your paperwork. I know we had a meeting and, staff is waiting for your phone call to set up a meeting. So they are, they'll get with you and the county engineer as well. So they'll get that taken care of. Dodge, thanks for coming out. Mr. Stats, thanks for the phone call out. Yes, it's good to look off into the future while we're doing the budget. And Mr. Adams, that sounds like Mrs. Kupka and Mr. Collins are going to work on that. So, and let's see, last Saturday, I guess it was just last Saturday. Yeah, I attended the King George AA CP event, the Black History event that they held at the high school. It was a great time, great music. We actually had a King George High School alumni that was there as the comedian, and he's an actor that's working his way into the acting world and doing some plays by the name of Paul Jerry. We also had a fellow there who was James Saxmo Gates, and he was actually a Grammy-nominated musician, and his band came and provided all the music, so it was a very good time. Mr. Miner was there from the county, and seems like everybody had a good time. And that's all I have for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. All right. Just like to first of all say thank you to everyone who came out. I think my colleagues have probably touched on pretty much everyone's comments, so I won't belabor those points. I will say we do have this Thursday our first work session. So we will have, I believe, Dr. Boyd coming to discuss the school's proposed funding request. And as Mr. Stat said, understanding why departments need the money, this is an opportunity for those department heads, and schools is our biggest budget line item to understand why their request is going to be what their request is. So if you have availability, I would encourage you to come out. It will not be here. It will be at the firehouses, Mr. Miller said, but those are also public, so people are welcome to come and listen in. So other than that, I'd just like to say on Wednesday, February 22nd, I attended the Commonwealth meeting. I had a really interesting presentation from Lieutenant Matt Grimm, the explosive ordnance disposal Detachment at Dahlgren. Had a whole bunch of stories about unexploded ordnance in the area and just telling people to be careful. Things as along the lines of even as someone has passed away, going through the estate, finding munitions, live grenades. So like someone had 3 grenades, one of them actually happened to be live. So if you have any, just be cognizant and be careful. And it never hurts to reach out to the EOD and have them come out and check anything out before you mess with it, because obviously that would be a terrible tragedy if something were to occur. So do be careful when you find any of those kinds of items out and about. Don't take any chances. Their number is 540-621-6490. I'm sure you could as well reach out to the sheriff's department, and they would be able to reach out to the EOD as well if there was ever an incident. So just be careful, everyone. Change of command's coming up soon. It's set for June 2nd. Captain Copeland will be relieved by Captain David Wilson Jr. I'm sure that will go out to the board for everyone to be invited and attend that change of command as well. And as Ms. Kupka brought up, we did have the grand opening of Highmark Brewery. Very exciting to have our first brewery in the county. And she said, thank you to Mr. Miner and the Economic Development Department in our county, and just helping to make sure that this finally came to fruition. Hopefully we'll have more going forth. But I was excited about it. And if you enjoy beer, I would encourage you to patron this business and help it succeed. So thank you to them. And that's all I have. So I will close reports from members of the board, and we will move to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
motion please to approve the consent agenda as posted.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Into discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We will move to constitutional officer reports. Don't have any. Okay. And so we'll move on to report of the county attorney.
Good evening. As you will recall, at the last meeting, there was a motion that was seconded and carried to make a reappointment to the local Board of Building Code Appeals. And at that time, the motion included that it be a recommendation to the circuit court to make the appointment. So I looked at that issue, and I think there was confusion with the BZA, the Board of Zoning Appeals, which requires court appointment. This is actually a direct appointment. So I would request that the board possibly clarify that motion to make that direct reappointment of Miss Leslie Jordan.
Okay, I would like to appoint Miss Leslie Jordan to the Board of Building Code Appeals.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
And the other item I have this evening is just an update from the outside counsel to the treasurer, who's been actively engaged in recovering tax revenue. There are 13 real estate tax sales that will be put to auction on April 5th. There's public notice and information available about that, should anyone have any interest in any of those properties.
Anyone have questions for Ms. Leckey?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Collins?
I was just curious how the landfill negotiation is coming along.
So the last I heard was that we would be getting a response back from Waste Management. I have not yet heard from them. I can make an inquiry and just find out approximate time frame to expect their response.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lackey, and thank you for the clarification on the appointment. So we will move on to, we have no public hearing, so we'll move on to presentation reports. IGSA overview, Mr. McNair and Mr. Broughton.
Good evening, Chairman Granger and members of the board and staff. My name is Diane Smith. I'm representing Fort AP Hill tonight. Mr. Henry McNair was scheduled to be with you, but unfortunately could not make it. On behalf of our garrison commander, Colonel Duffy, I would like to thank you for the opportunity of being here tonight to explore opportunities for partnership with King George County through intergovernmental service agreements. Joining me tonight is Mr. John Broughton, Salas O'Brien, who will be giving a presentation on partnership opportunities. Thank you.
Good evening, County Administrator Miller and council members. Appreciate the time this evening. As Ms. Smith mentioned, my name is John Broughton. I'm a DoD contractor for the Army and have been working very closely with Fort A.P. Hill for the past several months. Serving as contract support to the Army, we utilize a legislative authority called the Intergovernmental Support Agreement, which provides a little bit of information here for you on what that means. Back in 2013, Congress established a legislative authority called the Intergovernmental Support Agreements, which allows the military to enter into public partnerships with municipalities, county agency, state government, public universities, public hospitals. And as a result of this legislative authority, across the DoD, we have over 150 IGSAs across the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. As a result of these IGSAs, DoD is saving about $40 million a year of taxpayer money for the improvement and efficiencies of various services. The objectives and outcomes that we are looking to achieve here between Fort A.P. Hill and King George is obviously cost savings and efficiencies between the Army and community partners such as King George. By leveraging the Intergovernmental Support Agreement, our hope is that through this partnership, we'll be able to increase the relationship and strengthen the relationship between A.P. Hill and King George. Our process here with Fort A.P. Hill that we have been working on with Colonel Duffy and his staff is being able to leverage this authority to better find economy of scales of doing service, not only within the DoD, but with the community. As I mentioned, the authority was established in 2013 under the National Defense Authorization Act. There's the Title 10 code right there. Right there in that Venn diagram, you'll see a variety of benefits that are achieved through these partnerships. To the left of the Venn diagram, you'll see some military benefits, followed by some partner benefits. This definitely provides a great revenue stream for King George County. We have seen job creation come out of these IGSAs across the country where the military has established these IGSAs with community partners. In addition, some of the revenue that can be generated here through this partnership can also help be used toward capital improvement funds. We've been working very closely with Mr. Miner and some of his staff, Ms. Pitts, as well, on some of these conversations that we have had with King George. Just to provide you with a couple of examples of what types of IGSAs can come out of this. Fort Benning has a ecological forest monitoring IGSA agreement with Auburn University, where students are doing ecological forest monitoring on behalf of Fort Benning. So not only is this helping Fort Benning comply with environmental requirements, but it's allowing Auburn University students to get real-world hands-on experience that can be directly tied to their curriculum and graduation requirements. Some of these are through paid internships, and some of this can be done through unpaid internships. So we see a lot of opportunities forming these types of partnerships with local universities across the country. Road maintenance and repair, Fort Bragg and North Carolina Department of Transportation is another one where North Carolina DOT is providing road maintenance and repair services on Fort Bragg. And then just down the road, Fort Lee has an IGSA with Prince George County for computer-aided dispatch to increase the response time through 911 services. If I can just take a moment to highlight a particular regional IGSA that I and my team developed a couple of years ago. It's the first of its kind in the program called a regional IGSA that involves a partnership with a number of military installations in Virginia, partnering with Virginia DOT for road maintenance and repair, in addition to access to state contracts through bulk procurement of salt, sand, and stone for military installations. As you'll see in the first year, the 3 installations that are currently part of this regional IGSA have saved $29,000, and we anticipate that over 10 years, it'll exceed $300,000. And more installations are being added to this regional IGSA. I'm actually currently not only supporting Fort A.P. Hill, but I'm also providing contract support to Fort Lee, who will also be able to take advantage of this. As I mentioned, I've been working with Fort A.P. Hill for several months through this IGSA process. This just gives you a snapshot of what our strategic engagement process looks like as we have been working closely with Fort A.P. Hill. Right there in the diagram, you'll see that we are now at the concept approval stage. So where we're asking right now, through the conversations that we have been having between Fort A.P. Hill and King George, as well as Town of Bowling Green, we are in the process of developing and refining what that concept approval will look like through the partnership. And I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment about what we are asking the County of King George to consider in its partnership with Fort A.P. Hill. So back in September, we held an initial introductory meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Duffy and his leadership staff to walk through the process and identify some specific partnership opportunities that the garrison was interested in exploring. Back in October, we conducted what we call a site visit, where we met some of the King George County staff to walk through some of these partnership ideas. And we began to further flush through these ideas in a little bit more detail. We have facilitated a number of working sessions and meetings with King George County staff. And just last month, we were here meeting with you, sir, and Mr. Miner and Ms. Pitts, and we've identified engineering services as a partnership opportunity. Much like with King George and Fort A.P. Hill, Fort A.P. Hill requires a number of architectural and engineering services for a number of projects that need to be implemented and executed at the garrison level. By entering into a partnership with King George County, based on our conversations, we know that the county has several contracts with 7 local engineering firms. The partnership that we are proposing with King George County is through this IGSA, Fort A.P. Hill would be able to piggyback on those contracts that you have with the engineering firms that would provide architectural and engineering services to A.P. Hill. By piggybacking on those contracts, what's in it for King George is that King George would add an administrative fee to manage and oversee the partnership with Fort A.P. Hill, but also act as the go-between to the engineering firms that you all have contracts with. We see this across the board with all of our IGSAs and public partners that participate with the military installations across the country. Typically, on average, we see a 10% admin fee. So based on the task orders that Fort A.P. Hill would be asking for the type of engineering service, King George would add a 10% fee to that Fort A.P. Hill would be willing to pay King George. One thing, just to give you a little bit of a broader context, there are limitations that Fort A.P. Hill currently has where anything that's over $2,500 requires Fort AP Hill to issue a contract. So we're helping to alleviate an administrative burden on Fort AP Hill and the contracting time that it takes to get a contract executed just for one simple engineering requirement. So you would be helping Fort AP Hill alleviate a significant administrative burden and being able to respond to some of these projects that AP Hill would like to execute in a timelier manner. So where we left it with Ms. Pitts and Mr. Minor, and with you, sir, last month is that we've put together what we call a IGSA packet that would pretty much outline the details of what the partnership would look like between AP Hill and King George County. And from there, our next steps is seeking King George County approval from you all so that we can move forward with finalizing this concept packet that we would then send down to San Antonio, where the Army's Installation Management Command headquarters resides. And then through the approval of King George County and the board members here and the Army, we would hopefully execute a partnership agreement and formalize it in a signing event, hopefully in the near future. And so recommendation that I'd like to see is that you allow us to move forward with this partnership effort. And I'm happy to answer any questions or if Ms. Minor has anything to add to the conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Bratton. First, I'll ask if any of my colleagues had any questions. Mr. Collins.
Good evening, sir. I'm a veteran United States Army.
Thank you for your service,
And
sir.
I was a citizen of Caroline County for 10 years. I moved from Caroline County because of Fort AP Hill. So when Fort AP Hill talks about a good partner, they weren't a good partner. They damaged my home. They moved their operations from Fort Lee to the south of Port Royal area with all the big bombs. All the folks down in that region had problems with their homes. When you'd call, they would say, sorry, tough luck. So what I'm telling you is I don't have a good experience with Fort AP Hill. I would not be interested in this agreement, nor would I be interested in King George County managing your contracts so you can get a better deal. So everything that I've dealt with AP Hill has been negative. So that's where I stand. I'm sorry it's so abrupt and straightforward, but it still hadn't worn off after all these years. And it's still going on in that neighborhood. So thank you for listening.
Anyone else have any questions? Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. So you mentioned typically a 10% administrative fee for engineering services is what we would receive for our staff being a go-between between Fort AP Hill and the construction company.
The engineering firm.
The engineering firm, I'm sorry. So can you, for specifically Fort AP Hill, like you had some other examples up there, but for Fort AP Hill, like what's a ballpark number of construction projects in a typical year, a number of projects that you would have, that there'd be an expectation that we be the go-between, our staff?
Well, the goal would be to start small. So for a design project, say for like a renovation of one of Fort AP Hill's buildings, where Fort AP Hill would want to utilize one of the engineering firms to help with the design, review the design, and provide some designing support to a renovation of existing building. Fort AP Hill would issue a task order to King George County pretty much to circulate the request to seek design and engineering support from one of the firms. And there's really no additional legwork on the county staff other than just passing through the task order to the engineering firm. And because the way that the IGSA legislative authority is written, DOD can't pay directly the engineering firm because they're a private firm. So the language stipulates public partner. So I guess the admin side for that we would be at that Fort APO would be asking for King George is when payment needs to be rendered, the payment would go through King George County to pay the engineering firm for the services.
Okay, so that's then not only our engineering staff, but also our finance staff then, if I'm hearing you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. And so then thank you very much for your answers. Question for Mr. Miller. I get that procurement and economic development were parts of these discussions. Was the county engineer consulted regarding whether this is feasible for him or his department? Do they have time to do this? I'm just concerned about the impact on their ability. He is a very small department, as you know, to do what we already have him doing.
So it's my understanding this began back way before me. I believe it began under Dr. Young. I think Mr. Minor and Ms. Pitts kind of were carrying that forward, looking at a possibility that there would be revenue. I don't know. Did you all talk with Mr. Cusenberry? Really what I think the gentleman is talking about when he talks about engineering, it's not necessarily our county engineers. It's our slate of engineers that we already have an existing arrangement with. They want to utilize those folks because it's a difficulty that, is my understanding, they want to, they have a difficulty in securing that because of the processes that are at play with Department of Defense and the federal government. And so I think that what I understood is they would say, hey, Megan, we've got a building. So use the example of what the school board did with the study for the preschool. You all had initiated a capital improvement request that they do a study to figure out what the steps are to build a preschool. That was $60,000. So if as I understood, we would get $6,000 as administrative fee of something, if it's 10%. So I think that was the process. The way I understood it is it wasn't going to be Mr. Cusenberry or Mr. Young actually doing the work. It was them coordinating the engineering portion. Is that correct?
Yes. And we've identified a staff member in finance that could handle the tracking of this project if it went through.
So as a follow-up, what is that staff member already doing?
That staff member is the school's finance specialist. So they handle the invoicing for the school's invoices that come through and issuing checks at the end of the week and other duties as assigned.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Collins.
So they would use county finance, they would use an engineer, they'd have to use our county attorney to review the contract because we were not going to sign off on something without that. And then we have a county administrator who needs to have an overview of all that. So for a $60,000 contract, we'll get $6,000 for all that.
That was an example.
Well,
That was an example, right?
That doesn't, 10% wouldn't be worth it. Along with what the government, the federal government said, instead of going through your processes of getting contracts the normal way, you would basically shortcut it through us. And so we'd be doing what you should be doing yourself. And the only thing we're going to recover is 10%, which would be costing more than 10% to manage these contracts through all these folks. And I'm sure there'll be more involved. I don't see how this will be beneficial to us?
The county already has the contracts with the 7
Yes.
engineering firms.
Yes.
We're not asking to have a relationship with all 7 firms. And the 10% was just an example as what we see across the enterprise of what our public partners are charging. King George is welcome to look at if they want to charge 12%, 15, 20%.
40%.
But keep in mind that if there are, we're not just talking about one example. If there were some other architect and engineering support that AP Hill would need, that could accrue over time and generate additional revenue to the county. And we're not asking for, this would not be like a weekly full-time duty job. I mean, Fort AP Hill would probably issue a few of these throughout the given year based on funding allocated to do various projects at the garrison.
So we would be using our county staff for a fort that's in another county. I don't, and 10% wouldn't be enough. I mean, to use our resources. And Mr. Miller, there was a meeting held with all you folks with him. I didn't know anything about this until tonight, or till I got the packet.
Well, this is,
I'm a little disappointed that I haven't had to be able to have previous information that there has been a start of a relationship with these folks. So I'm not happy about that either, but 10% wouldn't do it at all.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Mr. Collins, there's no relationship. This is a proposal. We have meetings with prospective vendors, prospective applicants for, economic development projects that we have that, we entertain. And then when it ultimately has to come to the board, we bring this to the board for final action. I don't think there's even, this was meant to present this to get your input. We certainly are not suggesting that you have to sign off on this. It would be handled most likely as a one big agreement that would allow us to do this and administer it on an every a case by case basis. But we're not asking you to approve anything tonight. I think it was more of this was something for you to consider and ponder as a way. I think Ms. Pitts and Mr. Minor were looking at ways to be a resource to Fort AP Hill on this. It wasn't, we also have relationships with the naval base as well.
Which is King George County.
Well, and that's fine. If that's the direction that we're told to go in, we understand that. We just wanted to present it. We're not asking you to make a decision, finalize it. I think this was just a proposal.
So at the bottom of the page, it says proceed with mutual beneficial partnership. That sounds like that you wanted to move forward with this.
I think that is Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. That is
Make a motion to table this for further discussion at another time. Second it.
If I may.
Okay.
All right, there's no second, the motion dies. Mr. Miller, go ahead.
I believe that the recommendation was Mr. Broughton's presentation. There is nothing that we have presented at this time, the staff.
Okay, Ms. Binder, you had some questions?
Yes, I do. And one question I have is, why did you not reach out to Caroline? That's my first question, Caroline County, since the base is in their locality.
Well, as part of the process, what we do is Caroline County was approached and we met with them as well. Ultimately the timing wasn't right for them, but we are continuing to explore these level of opportunities with Caroline County. We met with Essex County as well because of the size of Fort AP Hill. And part of our process is we reach out to the localities that surround a military installation. So back in October, we met with King George County, City of Fredericksburg, Caroline County, Town of Bowling Green, Spotsylvania County, as well as Essex County.
Okay, thank you. And then previously, and I think when we first started to have these discussions, Mr. Granger was the only other supervisor. We've been talking to our own base for a while now about mutual partnerships. I know with the Service Authority, we also talked to them a long time ago, partnering, but one of the questions is would this be sort of piggybacking on contracts that the county already has, or are these separate? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's exactly what we're looking at is how 40PO could piggyback on the contracts the county has.
Okay.
Yes, and we know that there is an IGSA that does exist between the county and Dahlgren.
Right. So that's where,
Similar structure.
because I know this was several years now. It's amazing. It was probably 4 years ago now. There's a big push, at least for the installations, to reach out to the localities to try to make these partnerships. And I know Mr. Granger and I were part of those discussions before. The other three board members were not on the board, so I just wanted to make that aware. And one of the things I'm thinking of is for me, I need a little bit more information before I make a discussion. So I understood this presentation as just being informational, and that's why, Mr. Collins, I did not second your motion, because I see this as informational. Is that correct? That's what you were looking for? Okay, thank you.
Share the information and provide you with an update on the ongoing dialogue that we've been having.
And you still have to come back to us for any kind of understanding or vote.
Yeah, if we were to form an agreement, we would of course bring that agreement before you for final approval before we move forward on it.
Okay,
And
I just
terms
wanted
are still negotiable.
clarification on that. Thank you.
So,
Mr.
Chairman.
Mr. Stonehill hasn't had a chance yet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. It's interesting. Usually it's counties that are jumping on state or federal contracts, and now we're looking at it the opposite way. The feds or the military is looking at to piggyback on our contracts. I think that was pretty interesting. You kind of Mrs. Binder's question kind of answered mine. I was just asking about Caroline, Essex, Spotsy, your surrounding counties. And I guess you have contacted Caroline, Essex, if I heard correctly.
Yes.
And what was their response to this proposal?
We're still in the conversation stages with looking at other partnership opportunities with those counties as well.
Okay. I mean, you going as far as Spotsy or Stafford or anything?
Not as far as Stafford, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'll come back to everyone in a moment. I'm going to ask first, county staff. Ms. Lackey, do you have an understanding of the impact it would have to you? Does this open the county to any concerns from a legal perspective, being the go-between?
So obviously there would need to be some negotiation and a final agreement. There is probably the biggest hurdle, but probably not insurmountable, is does King George have to front money for another contract? But I have not yet, dug into the whole situation. It might be a possibility where we could set up an escrow account or something of that nature where the funds come to the county before they're released. So my main concern would be the county fronting money for the base, but it sounds like this arrangement has been worked out in other jurisdictions. So the biggest part of my time would be, if there is interest in moving forward, just be negotiating the agreement and bringing it forward
Front.
to you all.
Okay.
It would be in large part just that one event of my time.
And then
That's correct. Typically, on the legal counsel side of things, it's just the need to review the transaction document that would formalize the partnership.
And Ms. Pitts, would you be able to speak to the staff time that would be required?
On formulating the agreement.
Nope. On the execution, like each time it comes in.
So what it would look like, I would imagine, is that we would get a task order from the fort, and then that task order would be directed to the staff member that we potentially have identified, who would then distribute it to the engineering firms that we are already on contract with. Then they would submit proposals to us. We would present those to the fort to make their own mind up on who they'd like to proceed with. And then we'd get the task order issued, receive an invoice from the firm, send the invoice along with that possible administrative fee attached to it, and then receive funding back, and then us paying the invoice directly to the firm.
Tracking. Okay, I appreciate it. So I will say I can appreciate the idea of trying to find ways to legally meet some of the needs for entering into these contracts. As a federal employee, I can tell you procurement is onerous. And I do recognize that. So obviously the key is legal things that can be done. So obviously this is something that is allowed at the federal level. So and at the end of the day, this is, I would say, it sounded like it could definitely possibly be a benefit to the county in regards to revenue generation. I think I disagree with Mr. Collins's perspective that it would cost more than it would end up generating, and I think staff probably kind of would say that would be a similar statement. I also see this as an opportunity to just entertain the idea of the impact to. I mean, we all pay federal tax dollars as well, and trying to streamline those processes in order to make it as efficient as possible to spend the least amount of money just to do the job and execute what needs to get done to be successful. So I'm in favor personally of moving forward with crafting something and having Ms. Lackey be involved in figuring out if this is possible and how it can be done. But I would like to see it brought back to the board to be entertained, personally.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I would have my say. I'm going to work my way from right to left. Ms. Bender, did you have anything else? Mr. Collins?
So when you, Ms. Pitts, you described all those functions, can you put an hour amount on all those functions?
I cannot as of yet.
Mr. Broughton, you said that you talked to Caroline and they weren't interested at this time. That's what I heard earlier.
Correct. Yeah.
So the home county is not even interested?
Back in October, at the time, they were still working through their own sort of administrative changes, and we hope to re-engage them in the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on this slide here, develop the concept packet. The burden is on you and the Army for that, right? The burden is not on our staff.
Correct. No.
Okay. And then the transaction document, at least the first draft of the legal instrument, the burden is on you all. It's not on her, right?
Correct.
Okay.
These are both of those are templated documents from DoD. I drafted them up using those templates. The transaction document I sent over to Ms. Pitts about a week ago, I think, to begin at least staffing the internal review process. And I think you were waiting till tonight to do that. So we definitely have a draft transaction document put together.
Okay, thank you.
That is the formal document that would establish the agreement between the county and AP Hill. The concept packet is an internal Army document that allows us to conceptualize what the partnership would look like.
Thank you. All right. If that's the case, I would like to see this brought back to the board.
Okay. Well, I made my stance clear. I'll ask my colleagues. I'll work again from right to left. Ms. Bender, would you like to see it brought back, or are you not interested in even entertaining this?
It's okay to bring it back.
Okay. Mr. Collins, I believe you're a no, but I'll let you have your say.
Well, I would probably say that no. Home county's not interested in it. There's seems to be a lot of flaws in it, and there's still numbers that we don't know of what it would truly cost our county. And the relationship with AP Hill, with Caroline, at least south of Port Royal, has been very negative in any agreements. So that's historical. So my answer would be no.
Okay.
No.
Sure. Mr. Stonehill?
It's a very interesting concept. There's obviously a lot to it, but I would be curious to see what the agreement would look like. So if they want to work on it and bring it back, I'd be more than interested in looking at it.
I think we have a majority of the board who would like to see it brought back to be entertained. I do think it was a fair question in regards to trying to quantify the number of hours it would take from a staff perspective time to help us understand the possible pros and cons of this. So if staff could help to provide that information as well, though, I think that would be very valuable to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right, we will move on to the Dahlgren Railroad Heritage Trail Winter Half Marathon. Mr. Jim Lynch. I hope yours won't be as as interesting. At least interesting is the wrong word, but yeah.
Well, never a guarantee. Let's see, Mr. Dian's going to help me out here. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to talk a little bit about the half marathon that we held last month on the railroad trail. This was actually our 14th running of the event, and let's see, Mr. Dines, I think if you can expand that, I think there's a place to click on there that says presentation or present. This is a new package to us all. It's called Canva, and we're all learning exactly how to make it work. But I will keep talking. The race was held on a cold day, but not like last year. Anybody was out there last year? Remember, we were up to our eyebrows in snow and ice and sleet and everything else. Mr. Dine, if you can go to slide number 2. There you go. The course of the race, a half marathon is about 13 and a half miles. It runs from our Bloomsbury Road trailhead, traipsing through the woods on the trail to a point where the runners turn around, almost to the gun club driveway. And in fact, the club is very, very helpful to us. That point on the trail is a little bit hard to reach, so they let us access it through their driveway. The blue stars there are where we have aid stations, water, snacks. The SCP is a safety checkpoint where we have one of our volunteers out there with a checkboard and a panel checking off everybody that runs past. Each one of those stars also has a radio station where our ham radio operators check everybody that comes in. Radios back just to make sure that everybody's accounted for and nobody gets lost. And I know you're saying, how can anybody get lost on a railroad trail that's just straight out? Trust me, people can get lost. We've actually had to call the sheriff out on occasion because people have gotten lost. So, Mr. Dine, next slide. Okay, this is a video here. If we can hear the audio, can you crank the audio up a little bit, Mr. Dine? This is the start of the race, and I had the camera 100 yards down the race. The audio is actually very, very interesting because all the runners are yelling and hollering, and that's our whoop, whoop, whoop. Don't remember that slide before. That's our railroad hand car that we have that paces the runners. So you'll see the runners come running down the trail. The hand car paces them down, and if the audio gets cranked up, you can hear a crazy guy yelling. You can hear the runners yelling. You'll also see our trail mascot, a Great Pyrenees, that's going to be trotting along with the runners. The Great Pyrenees is going to show up any minute now. We almost had him. But anyway, let's see. This Great Pyrenees, Great Pyrenees is a big dog. He's owned by one of our volunteers, and Great Pyrenees just loves to hang out with people and be with people. And so when he saw all these people beginning to run down the trail, he just thought, "Hey, I'm going to go too." So you will see him any minute now. And there's some hardy hand pumpers on the there he is there. Hand pumpers on the hand cart, just going along. And there's our Great Pyrenees. His name, believe it or not, wearing a Navy banner, his name is Sailor. So, okay, Mr. Dines, we can move on to the next slide. I wish the audio was on, because the audio is actually kind of spectacular. One of the very interesting things about this particular run, the military academies have marathon clubs, okay? And these are organized clubs. They're extremely well organized. And they get runners, and they run in three or four races around the country. This year, they had apparently heard about our race and said, "Hey, why don't we go run down here?" And they apparently had a really good time, because they did tell us that they want to come back next year. A number of them participated, 65 of them. The only military academy that does not have a marathon club is the Merchant Marine Academy. But all the others have extremely active marathon clubs. Okay, Ms. Stein, moving right on. There were a total at this race of 212 winners, the 212 finishers. The guy that won, a guy named Brian Flynn, actually won last year, a new course record. Jillian Howe I think she's a member of the Army team or the Navy team, won for the ladies. Our races are extremely popular, and we get people coming year after year. The pair of runners at the bottom there, the guy on the right is this year's winner, Brian Flynn. The guy on the left is named Alex Hetherington. Alex comes most years and has won the race 3 times. So he's one of our really good guys. Okay, Mr. Dine, next slide. Just showing a little bit of a cluster of how the runners' times compare with their ages, kind of a little interesting scatter plot. It also shows, interesting enough, that the young, very fit academy runners are clustered, and this is the way it is when you have a cross-country team. A cross-country team will try and run together. Ms. Binder, as an ex-cross-country coach, knows all about that. You really want to encourage your runners to run together and encourage each other. So that's why those teams are sort of clustered, because they really want to encourage the guys that maybe aren't quite so fast to keep up as long as they can, because these teams are very competitive. I know it's hard to believe that the Navy team would compete with the Army team and get very serious about that. Trust me, very serious. But the winner of the race is that guy crossed just to the left of the 40 age. He's middle age, much older than these really young guys, but he won. We're extremely proud of him. Okay, Mr. Dine. Let me see. So this is just the Academy runners from all the teams. The Air Force Academy actually won was very close between the Air Force and the Navy. I think there was only three points, but between them, and as Mrs. Binder knows, that's close. Okay, Mr. Dine, can you move on to the next slide? This is just a capture of a couple of pictures of everything that was going on. That lower, the group picture there, the lower left. This is some of our radio hams that come out and help us out on the trail. These guys are amazing. I'm not sure we would really feel comfortable hosting a race like this. Have hundreds of people running through the woods without being able to communicate up and down the trail. The guy on the right is the chairman of the group, president of the group, Jack Dean. I know we all know Jack, and those guys are amazing. Okay, Mr. Dine, see if we can move on. Naturally, putting on an activity like this requires the help of tons of people. On the race day, we require about 35 volunteers helping out with parking, being out on the course to help the runners. And this is not one of our long races. You know, we're only using a relatively small part of the complete course. So when we have a much longer race like the Sheets Run that's coming up this coming weekend, there's many more volunteers required. Amateur radio operators, the hams, thanks to them. Northern Virginia GovCom, thank you. Medical response, we actually had to call the rescue squad out. There was a real nice article in the newspaper about that. Really appreciate the rescue squad. Arsenal Events, who's our race director. The command master chief was our official starter. Appreciate him coming out. Tourism committee and Sim Finchins helped with the academy's entrance fees to the race. And it says the tourism committee, Mr. Minor, thank you. And you guys had to approve that, so thank you. And the Academy Marathon clubs for attending, it was great. And there were two reporters, a reporter and a photographer from the newspaper. That's the article, and then there was an article about a week later also about the race. So next slide, Mr. Dine. Next slide, I think, is just questions. Anybody have any questions? I would like to point out that I handed out a piece of paper just for you all to have notes. It talks about the other races coming up. I would like to point out there's an error on there. The fall festival race is on October 14th, not October 7th. And I was informed tonight while I was back in the audience that our race director for those races is going to add a 10K race to that. So I'm not sure I saw any of you guys out running last weekend, but I hope you guys will sort of get primed up and maybe get on out there and go. Surely you guys can run a mile. Okay, does anybody have any questions? That's all I've got.
Awesome. Mr. Lynch, I appreciate the report on the activity, and sounds like it was a fantastic success. It was really cool to see the academy out there. So that really neat event. So thanks for setting it up and hosting it. But I'll go down to my colleagues. Ms. Binder, I'm sure has something she'd like to.
Well, actually, I have two. Well, one is I just had a conversation with some folks that are going to be part of your race on Saturday. Okay. And they wanted me to bring to your attention that they love their races, but it's becoming quite competitive. So they would want to, hopefully you have some more races so that those that are fun runners can have a good experience and not feel like they're going to get creamed by the competition. So your races are very successful because you have so much competitiveness. But think about adding some, fun runs for those that are not as competitive, but really enjoy what you do for the community and might have a cheaper entrance fee because, you know, there are a lot of people that do this for exercise that might not be the academy standard, you know what I mean? Or
That's actually an excellent idea. I know that the race this coming weekend, the Sheets is called a trail run. It's not actually a race. Nobody is timed on that. But as Mrs. Bender points out, it's extremely popular. It was advertised. Registration was open one morning. Registration was completely sold out by the end of the day. So so that cries out for, can we have more of those?
And then the last being said is one of my former runners and former King George graduates who's now in the military. Some colleges, not all colleges, have marathon teams. I learned when he joined at Texas A&M, Brandon Deskew. So, you know, that race would be great to maybe contact some of the colleges that have marathon teams.
Other colleges. That's
like Texas A&M does have one because he was on that team.
Yeah, real good idea. Yeah, that's a real good idea too. I don't actually know if Mary Washington has a cross.
When I coach there, they have a cross country team, but they don't have a marathon team. Not all colleges have one. It's just this is a suggestion for you because when he told me about it, I didn't know they existed, even as a coach, and he really benefited from it. And they go to races all across the country. They're marathon teams, so it might be just to reach out to some, tourism, get some folks here from other localities, other schools. Just a suggestion.
Great idea.
Thank you.
From your mouth to my ears to Mr. Minor.
Mr. Collins, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. It's always very popular. Maybe on October the 14th, that all 5 of us can run in a little challenge, see who comes out top of the heap of all 5 of us. I'm sure I'll be at the bottom, but I wouldn't mind challenging them.
That's okay. It's okay to be last. Trust me. We cheer for the last guy just as much as we cheer for the first guy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Lynch. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We will move on to GWRC, King George Courthouse Bicycle Presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As part of the fiscal year 2023 Rural Transportation Work Plan, the George Washington Regional Commission is assisting King George County with 4 projects. The first is implementation of our Trailways feasibility study that was produced in 2018 but adopted in 2021. In doing so, Ms. Carrie Eves has developed the King George Courthouse Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. We will be using this plan along with the information we gather through VDOT and their Ready So Grow grant to hopefully acquire a transportation alternatives grant for that application's due later this spring. So I just want to introduce to you Ms. Carrie Eves, Transportation Planner with George Washington Regional Commission and the Frederick Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. That's all.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Good evening, Chair and members of the board and staff. Thank you. All right. So here is the King George Courthouse Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. This is a draft. I'm not asking for approval this evening. In fact, this is going to begin a 30-day comment period. So if you have any comments, questions, anything to add to this, you will have time to do that over the next 30 days, you and members of the public. Next slide, please. So this is our study area. We begin with Madison Drive, the area around there, including Inaugural Drive, just a little bit to the west. And we go all the way to the Government Center, I believe it is down there with the YMCA, that whole area, all through the heart of King George. Next slide. So this area, first 2 maps we have here. What we have in the western area, actually we have a mistake on this slide. The percentage of non-drivers in our study area is highest in the western part of the study area, mostly school-age children in Presidential Lakes, who need to get to the elementary, middle, and high schools all along Kings Highway. And right now they're walking and there isn't really anywhere for them to walk. The median income and vehicle ownership is lowest in the eastern part of the study area where we have the Angelwood Development and Pineview Mobile Home Park. So you can see that there is a need for safe alternatives to driving all along the entire study route. Next slide. So study area character. In the Madison Drive intersection, I took a picture of that in the bottom right. You have a wide 4-lane road. You have a residential area with lots of folks, and on the other side, you have a commercial area. And there are no sidewalks, there's no crosswalk, and you have many school-age children who might want to cross the road. Where there are crosswalks, over at the next large intersection where Dahlgren Road is, there are crosswalks, but there are no sidewalks. So students walk to school, as you can see the one up here in the bottom, top right, along grassy areas where they can, because that's the only place they've got. Next slide. So VDOT has taken a look at this area for safety. Statewide VDOT areas for potential safety improvement. The segments are shown here in yellow. Potential safety improvement, or PSI, is a segment or an intersection that is performing much worse than they would expect it to for a segment or intersection of its type in the state. So they've already got their eye, especially on Madison Drive and Kings Highway, and the yellow sections there that are highlighted. And then VDOT also has a pedestrian safety action plan for the state, and it has named the intersection of Kings Highway and Dahlgren Road as a top 5% priority for developing safer crossings. Next slide. So what do you do to make it safer? We have several types of countermeasures we can put into place. First, the linear types, shared use path. That's an 8 to 10 foot paved path for use by both pedestrians and cyclists. If you take one of those and you stick it in the roadway right-of-way right next to the road, you call it a side path. Our next one is a buffered or separated bike lane. If you don't have enough room for a side path, this is a good choice for bicyclists. It's a bike lane that has either marked or buffered space or a physical barrier between it and the lane of traffic. Depending on the traffic volume and speed, this is a good choice. And we all know what a sidewalk is. When you're dealing with trying to cross a road, you want to use a high visibility crosswalk. Now, there are currently crosswalks in place in some of the areas along the roadway, but they're very minimal. They're just 2 bars going across the road. They're not very visible to cars, and they're not as safe as they could be. So we want to make them better. A high visibility crosswalk uses high contrast paint styles, nighttime lighting, advanced stop bars, so the cars have to stop way back and can see pedestrians in the crosswalk, and advanced warning signage to help make pedestrians and cyclists more visual and psychologically visible. There's also, for mid-block crossings, such as the one you have currently in the downtown core area, a pedestrian hybrid beacon. It doesn't stop traffic at all unless a pedestrian has to cross the road and be in it. It can either be activated by a push button or it can be automatic. Once activated, it displays a flashing light to let cars know that there's a pedestrian in the road. So that's the choice. One thing you are going to want on a 4-lane, 45-mile-an-hour road is a pedestrian refuge island. So that's in the median. You're going to have lights, and you're going to have a little crossing area where somebody with a wheelchair or bicycle could get through the median, and that way they can stop safely. It gives them a place to rest while they're trying to cross a busy 4-lane road. So these are all countermeasures that we can put in place to make Kings Highway safer to cross. One thing I want to call attention to, and why we want to do this, is because Kings Highway is trying to serve 2 very different, disparate purposes. It's both a main street for the people of King George and an arterial for all of the trucks and cars and freight moving through the area. It has to do both things well. And the only way to keep it safe is to put these things into place. So these are just illustrations to show you what our countermeasures look like. You can see the crosswalks on the left side, and you can see they're much more visible than what you have now. The lighting is especially important. And then the pedestrian safety refuge on the right side. Next slide. And then here's your linear safety countermeasures, the shared use path, called the side path on the first one there, right next to the road. It's basically just a really wide type of, it looks like a sidewalk, but it's much wider so that cyclists and pedestrians can pass each other. Your separated bike lane, that one is separated vertically by a curb, but it could just be by trees or those little bollards, the little posts that you see sometimes. That's another way to do it. And then if you don't have room for that, you can do a buffered bike lane if you have 25-mile-per-hour speeds, which I know that's something you guys are considering in your downtown area because you're going to be potentially having more trucks running through there pretty soon. I had heard that that might be the case. So that might be suitable in that situation. Next slide. So we'll get to recommendations now. I know that there are some existing sidewalks provided by commercial proffer, but they're very disjointed and they don't lead to anything. There are some crosswalks, but they don't lead to sidewalks, and they're not highly visible. With growing truck traffic because of the bridge having opened and general traffic volume, robust crossing safety is very important. So the following recommendations will help Kings Highway continue to function as a main street for the town of King George. Without them, Kings Highway may cease to be viable for anything but a freight corridor, and local businesses and residents may suffer. Next slide. So in our first section, Madison Drive to Dahlgren Road, the crossing improvements are in red, our side path is in blue, our planned sidewalks are yellow dots. Sorry, they're a little hard to see on here. And our existing sidewalks are in solid yellow. So I've recommended that we do a sidewalk all the way back to the inaugural drive on the north side so kids can get to school. And then crossing improvements at Madison, and then a side path on the south side from Madison onward going. And then just crossing improvements at the Food Lion, the rec center area, and then at Dahlgren Road. Next slide. Going from at Arnold Corner to Millbank Road, where Fox's Way leads to the high school. Same kind of thing, crossing improvements. And then the sidewalk's going to stop there because we have right-of-way constraints. And in all these cases, I don't want to put you in a situation where you have to buy right-of-way. So we're just going to cross and everybody's going to go on the south, on the side path leading into downtown. Next slide. In core downtown King George, you have serious right-of-way constraints. So we switched to a buffered bike lane, and we're going to fix the gaps in our sidewalks. And then at the library, we're going to cross the street and everybody's going to go on the north side. Are there any questions in all of this? Or are we good so far?
Go ahead, Ms. Bender.
Thank you, especially on this one. So you mentioned the right-of-way concerns. In the area across from Exit Realty and the churches, a lot of people park their cars because people live there. So did you take that in consideration? Because I'm seeing you creating a bike path out of where people now park for their
So
homes.
there's going to be a lot of those questions. This is a very preliminary, what they call a high-level planning sort of this design. A lot of that is going to come down to the engineering part of it. And RKK is currently working, that's a consultant for the Ready, Set, Go. Chris is working on that, right? That's the next level down. And they're going to work on a much more granular. My concept is we need to put this in this area, and they're going to try and figure out exactly where it goes.
That makes sense. I just wanted to bring that up because I know that would be a concern because I drive that path every morning and I see the cars parked there that live in those houses there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So as I said, going through the core downtown, it's going to have to change a little bit and then cross at the library. And at the library, that's where we might want a pedestrian hybrid beacon because that needs to be a very robust crossing because it's in the middle. It's not at an intersection. It's in the middle of a roadway. And then after the downtown, go ahead and go to the next slide. We're going back to a side path. And that's where density kind of lets up a lot. There's not as many destinations on the south side of Route 3. And at that point, we can discontinue sidewalks and just have a shared use path for everyone to use on the north side of Route 3. And that's it. That's all you need all the way down to the YMCA. And that is pretty much it. So as I said, we're going to have a 30-day comment period. I'm happy to receive your comments on this. This should be in their packet, right? Or they should have access to it? I'm sorry? Okay, you have the report, the document. I will get this to you. Okay. Okay, so they've got it. Okay, you'll have it. Good. So you'll have this, and you already have the document. So you can make comments on it over the next 30 days, and I will incorporate those. And then I'm presenting it to the GWRC board in April, and they are working on the Transportation Alternatives Project application, and that is going to be the most, like the highest priority chunk of this. And then all of the other parts of this can be developed into smart scale projects with consultation with VDOT. And that's basically what we're doing here. Do you have any other questions?
I'll just say thank you so much for coming out and briefing us on the high level view. So the comment period starts now,
Mhm.
and when does it close?
30 days from now. So
Okay, 30 days from like today.
yeah.
Okay, understood. And I appreciate it. I assume we'll have the documents here shortly so that we can review further. But I'll ask my colleagues. Did anyone else have any further questions?
Mr. Chair, I just want to ask
Go
her.
ahead.
So if residents want to comment, where would they go to put their comments in?
So there should be a place on our GWRC website. They can, my email right there, they can also comment at, and then our GWRC board meeting, they can come and comment there during our public comment period.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation. All right, we'll move on to action items. Department of Finance. Award of agreement for street name signs.
It's a bit tall. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Lauren Hall, and I'm here on behalf of Procurement. Procurement issued IFB 02242023-1400 to solicit responses for street name signs. One bid was opened on February 24th, 2023. Funding for this project is captured in Community Development's operating budget. Our recommendation is to authorize the county administrator to execute an agreement with DoD Contractors LLC for street name signs, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
The amount?
So you should have a bid form. It's a contract based on as needed services. So whenever they need signs, they order them.
Out of the community development
Yes.
budget line item.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that was the question I was going to ask. Where are the streets? But you just answered it. This is for future street names?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, these are all the blue signs that are actually naming the local streets.
Yes.
Anyone else have any further questions? I'll entertain a motion if anyone would like to make one.
I'll move to authorize the county administrator to execute an agreement with DoD Contractors LLC for street name signs subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you so much.
All right. I believe we have Mr. Minor here for a couple.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. If I may make a request, since I'm the next three items, can I move up the Back Porch Vineyards Music and Vines application? Thank you, sir. Back Porch Vineyard is requesting $24,000 in attack funding for their new concert series, Back Porch Vineyards Music and Vines. Back Porch Vineyards Music and Vines concert series is the first of its kind in King George County. This series will showcase local artisans, nonprofit organizations, and local attractions. The purpose of this event is to promote King George County as a unique destination where we celebrate rural character in a community-rich environment. Visit King George will be included as part of their marketing platform. So obviously, there's a request. There's actually a mistake. The total here is 8K per event when it's actually 7. The TAC worked that out at the TAC meeting. So the request will actually be $14,000 for 2 events. And I'll read the TAC recommendation now. After review, the TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve funding for the first 2 of the 3 concert series in an amount of $14,000. The TAC requested a representative back porch provide local impact to the tourism community before additional funding approved for the last concert series to be held. Essentially, coming back to the Tourism Advisory Committee for another request and also reporting on the impact of the first 2 events for funding. Staff agrees with TAC's recommendations. Happy to take any questions, and I believe the Gumps are here if you have any questions as well.
Does anyone have any questions?
Motion.
Hang on. Okay.
Motion to approve the TAC application for Back Porch Vineyards and Music and the Vines for $14,000.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? I'm going to ask Mr. Minor before we move on. Do you have the information about the tourism?
The current tourism fund?
Yes, where we're
Yes,
at.
sir. So I'll give you a quick breakdown. So the board and the county administrator allocate $91,000 that goes specifically to TAC applications. We are currently at, well, if all applications are approved tonight, we will have a balance of about $20,250. That's if all applications are approved tonight.
Understood.
Right. So we have a current fund balance of $548,464. So.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a motion properly seconded. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we'll go back to 305, Virginia.
Yes, the Virginia Black Business Director is requesting $5,000 in TAC funding to develop a strategic plan and efforts to promote tourism initiatives across the region. The Virginia Black Business Directory and the FXBG Black Tourism, Regional Black Tourism, are working collectively to strengthen the region's Black history and appeal to the curious tourist. This collaboration aims to strengthen the region's tourism base. After review, TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve funding for the Virginia Black Business Directory in an amount of $5,000. Staff agrees with TAC's recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. Did anyone have any questions for Mr. Minor on this one?
I just had a quick question. Thank you. Is this a regional effort?
Exactly right. So they're going to request, so we're the first request from the city. Next, it'll go on to Stafford EDA or Stafford's Tourism, Spotsylvania's Tourism, Caroline County's Tourism.
In the
So-
same amount from each locality?
So we're a smaller locality, less assets, so our request will be lower. They're probably going to increase it for the larger localities. I don't want to talk too much on it, but it's really, think of it as like the Northern Neck Tourism Commission is sort of what they're doing for this application there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Motion.
Mr. Collins?
Make a motion to approve the TAC application for Fredericksburg Regional Black Business with the amount of $5,000.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next application is going to be the King George Parks and Recreation is requesting $12,750 in TAC funding to support the VFW Post 12202 annual birthday party bash and King George Family Day. This will be a combined event for 2023. Each of these events were hosted separately in 2022. Combining the events has the potential to create a larger family-friendly event. The festival-style setting will boast food, music, vendors, and family activities. After review, the TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve funding for $12,750. Staff agrees with TAC's recommendations.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Minor?
This is the VFW, right?
Correct, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I do as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And perhaps if you aren't able to answer it, Mr. Clark is still here. How are you defining other event support for $1,500? What does that entail?
One of the items that we're already talking about is because alcohol will be at the event. They're going to have the wineries, and they're not sure which brewery they've they're working either with Highmark or Colonial Beach. We'll need additional signage that says no alcohol past this point, and things like that. All of this really is a catch-all in case they can't raise enough sponsorship. And so both the VFW and social services have been knocking on doors and trying to raise all the sponsorship. I don't imagine we will get anywhere near the $12,000 number, but I listed all the items that we were afraid that might need additional support. They are doing a lot because we're hosting it at Sealston this year. Regionally, the VFW has reached out to radio stations, the Freelance Star, and trying to push it as hard as we can to be a regional event with the advantageous location of being on the county line.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve BFW Post 12202 Annual Birthday Bash and King George Family Day TAC application, the amount of $12,750.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. All right. I believe we have the county attorney, opioid settlement participation resolution.
So, as those of you who will recall who were on the board in 2021, there was a resolution that authorized participation in an opioid settlement with some of the major distributors of opioids. And that participation achieved 100% participation by all local governments in Virginia, which allowed Virginia to maximize the incentives for participation. As you can imagine, the companies that are participating in these settlements, they're interested in getting a full resolution of all their claims with all jurisdictions. So once again, there's a different batch of distributors and sellers of opioids who are trying to settle their claims. So there is a recommendation from the Attorney General's office, as well as they're hoping once again achieve 100% participation throughout Virginia in this next round of settlements. There's further details in your agenda package about the particular companies that are involved in this settlement. Each of the settlement agreements is slightly different, but there is a summary that's available to anyone in the public that's at the nationalopioidsettlement.com, has information, has FAQs, frequently asked questions about the settlement. The maximum duration of payments is up to about 15 years. Some of them have accelerated payments. In fact, there's an incentive for early settlement with one of the particular entities. So the request is that jurisdictions who wish to participate need to indicate their willingness to participate by April 18th. And the exact amount of funds is not yet known, but the last batch of settlements, the Virginia share of the national settlement was about $530 million. This settlement compares at about $430 million. So it's fairly comparable to the payments the county's already getting, not quite 100% match, but it would significantly increase the amount of funding available. Most of these settlements have a requirement that 85% of the funding that is received go directly towards opioid abatement. So you can't use it to backfill other costs, administrative costs. At least 85% has to go towards the direct abatement of the opioid crisis. And the Attorney General's office is incentivizing localities, as I think we've mentioned at a prior meeting, to abide by a gold standard whereby 100% goes directly towards abatement. And the carrot that they have is that the Attorney General's office, through the Opioid Abatement Authority, is issuing grants for additional funds. Those can be through regional programs or local programs. Those will be available for the duration of the settlement period. Donna Hahn is already very well versed in what that gold standard is for audit purposes and tracking and expenditures. So no proposed projects have, are directly proposed yet to you all, but this would just be an action to go ahead and on a similar basis to the 2021 settlements to settle with these additional 6 companies. I'll take any questions if there are any.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? All right, so we have a resolution that would have us, allow us to participate if we were wanting to adopt it.
Make a motion to, the opioid settlement participation resolution
To adopt it?
to adopt.
A motion?
Do we need to mention all the entities that's listed in the resolution?
If the resolution is just to enter as presented, I think that's sufficient. But if you'd like me to, I could read the names of those companies.
As presented is fine. I just wanted to make sure, clarify.
Yeah, even in the resolution, which was prepared as a template resolution, they didn't use the full corporate name. You'll see they used kind of the common nomenclature for each of those companies, just because there are so many and they are kind of a mouthful.
All right, so we have a motion.
Second.
I'll
Second. All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Okay, we have a couple of discussion items. So we'll start. Mr. Stonehill had asked that we include the retiree healthcare resolution proposal. So I'm going to hand it off to him if you would like to start off the discourse.
Okay. Just quick. This started actually before I was on the board. Having HR look into just how we could go about getting health insurance for our retirees from the county. I didn't get very much information on that. I got with Mr. Miller later and asked the same thing. And when Mr. Metzler came on board with his background, I knew he would be the person to get this ball rolling. So last year, I just asked them to get some information just to see what it would look like that we could bring to the board to provide insurance. Basically, can have our employees continue what they're paying now for their insurance when they retire, either at 20 or 25 years. So they would be paying a percentage of that like they are right now. So Mr. Metzler and Mr. Miller got the information together, and I guess you have some information to relay up to them, to the rest of the board.
Good evening. This is actually one of the first things I heard about when I came to the county was the need for the desire for benefit plan for retirees. And what we're specifically looking at doing is having a tool so that we could help our retirees that retire before they're age 65 close the gap until they're 65 with their healthcare benefits. This is something that does go on all around us. So this is not something that's new to localities. What we're looking at today is asking the board to authorize Anthem to add retiree medical benefit options to our current portfolio with Anthem. Why we're asking that today is because Anthem gives us a short window each year at this time to make any plan changes with them. So they've given us until April 1st to come back to them with board approval or resolution from the board requesting or authorizing that retiree plans that would mirror our current employee plans in the plan design be added to our portfolio. This is not committing currently right now with that action the county to any certain dollar amount. This would just make those plans available effective on July 1 when our renewals comes into play. Now talking about amounts and plan design would be our next step. I can convene quickly a committee of stakeholders to look at options to present to the board through budget meetings, whereas we would be able to give different options, different budget impact for different options, and can make decisions on funding it at that time through those budget meetings.
Just to add, I originally was looking at this because our other counties create this vacuum. I mean, Stafford just increased their sheriff's office 15%. I originally just was looking when I first started looking at this idea. It was just for emergency services people, because we keep running into the same issue of every time the northern counties do these pay raises, it creates this vacuum, and we lose our deputies, we lose our certified firemen, we lose all these people that we've spent a lot of money on. It would be great to be able to do all county employees, but these are the people that are very difficult to replace. I mean, the technical aspect of the fire department and the sheriff's office and all that kind of stuff. And it would be just another way of retention for the people who are here, 10 years or so. They're going to look off in the future and they go, if I, hang out another 10 or 15 years, I would be eligible for health insurance, or at least to stay on the plan that we're having right now, as opposed to, just keep throwing cash out of our pocket at them year after year after year. This gives something at the end of the road for them to look at. So it kind of keeps, hopefully keep it there. So this resolution here is, as Mr. Metzler said, it's not costing us anything. It's not, tying our hands to anything. This is basically just an option. If we don't do this, we can't even talk about it, or, he can't even further the talking with Anthem. This is just letting us continue the talks, and there's no money. Like he said, we would have to do something, all the mechanism later on and the costs and all that kind of stuff, that's down the road. So that's where we are.
Mr. Collins.
So I don't think it's fair just to have a certain group of employees. If you're going to offer it to county employees, it should be offered to all county employees, not just the fire and rescue and the sheriff's office. I think that the value of each employee would be the same, no matter what their function is. So we know what the cost of our side of the plan is now.
Correct.
So how much would that be? What is our cost now?
Depending on the plan, the county subsidizes between 91% of employee-only costs, and they do subsidize dual and family costs. Less than that, I think about 80% of those costs. So each plan has a different cost aspect of it. So one option would be to, allow the employee only to continue cost sharing with the county. Most counties around us don't cost share for dependents, but only cost share for employees. But that's details that we can put a lot of different plan designs together, and then I can cost them out based off of who we have potentially retiring through the system within this next fiscal plan year. So without kind of a model to go on, I'm not able to sit here and say, hey, this is going to cost X, Y, and Z.
Well, you would have a ballpark. I'm sure you've looked into this. I would be curious what the ballpark is. There has to be a number.
I agree, it has to be a number. I don't have that number for you tonight.
So this does not include school employees, right?
Correct. School employees already have a retiree medical program.
Right. They have a 5-year program. Correct.
I have not studied their program. I know they have it. I've talked to their HR to confirm that they have it, but I have not looked into how they administer the program.
So this resolution would just allow us to even continue entertaining.
Yeah, we're dead in the water without having the plans available for a July 1. We have this window right now to add them to our portfolio. Whether we fund them or not is a separate question.
If we adopt the resolution, all it does is change the plan to allow us to do this if we choose to fund it. And if we don't choose to fund it, we're in the same spot we're at right now.
That's correct.
Tracking. Okay. Did anyone else have any questions? Spinner?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You had mentioned, so when they retire, is it till 65, I think, of this benefits? Or is it until they?
It's until we would set it up or recommend setting it up until 65.
Okay.
At that time, at 65, you can go on Medicare.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that since you mentioned.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion, but I'd like to add all county employees to this.
I think it is for all county employees. I think Mr. Stonehill was just trying to give some background on the genesis of looking into it for the first place. But I think it would be available in execution across the board. Is that correct?
That is correct. We first started looking at it for just emergency services people, but then talking to Mr. Metzler, it's really not a real, it's not a huge amount of money for the entire county. So everybody would be eligible to do that. So that's just where we started. We ended up here. It would be eligible for everybody.
Motion. Make a motion to, for the resolution to adopt the retiree health proposal. And that didn't come out right as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
Motion, because I'm not clear on what I said.
So what I heard was you said to adopt the resolution approving the addition of retiree health benefits to the county's Anthem Blue Cross and Blue Shield policy and developing recommendations on resulting benefit eligibility and cost share as presented.
That sounds like what I said. Thank you.
I think it was a little bit shortened, but the as presented, I think, captures the general idea since it's in the board packet.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Okay, we have one other discussion item. So I'd ask this to be added, and so I'll kick it off. This has to deal with property tax reassessment. It actually is two-parter. I'm going to start with, had some conversations with Ms. Lackey in regards to reassessments and if there's exceptional situations. As an example, COVID possibly could be considered for what maybe why housing prices might have been different than maybe expected or something along those lines. But if we feel that there is some exceptional reason that could have caused the genesis of this like anomaly, we do have the authority to post a reassessment earlier than the 4-year mark. If we so desired. So I did ask a little bit of information from Mr. Miller. I believe it was about $170,000 was the cost for executing the reassessment in the first place. I will ask Ms. Salaki as well, if let's pretend like we want to move forward with it. Would it then be 4 years after that? Or would it still be like, hey, this is like an intermediary one and then it's 4 years from the 2022 reassessment? Is that the right number here?
So by law, you have to do the reassessment every 4 years, but you could do it sooner if you chose.
Okay. So that'd restart the counter then.
Right. So
Okay.
if you chose to do a reassessment, 2 years from now, then you wouldn't be obligated to do one until 6 years.
Tracking. Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you for that clarification. So I was just bringing it to the board. I know we had a lot of discussion about this, a lot of citizen concern about it. And so I just brought it forth to see if there was any interest in possibly pursuing that activity. I don't think we're all that far away, actually, maybe a year away from probably starting the process for the next one anyways, is what it sounds like, because it is just takes time to get through it. So I think it might only be a 1 year earlier, maybe, once it actually gets contracted out and executed and all of those pieces. But as I said, there is a cost. And so I'm kind of bringing it forth to the board to see if there's any interest in maybe entertaining that. I'm not even sure I'm 100% on board with it, but at least want to have the discussion in open forum about it. So I'll leave it to my colleagues. Anyone feel strongly either way? And if no one feels strongly either way, then I guess that's a no. So,
Mr. Chairman, it's not a no. I was just curious of what, so spend $170,000 to do it early, and then if it's less revenue, would there, the gap in that, and
you'd have equalization like any other time that you have it. So that would be the one thing I'd possibly reply back from a citizen perspective is it's at the end of the day, we're not just taking money just to take money. I mean, it's our own money as well. At the end of the day, the taxes hit us as well. And so if things slide, we still need the revenue in place in order to run the county business. And that's to provide services for schools, fire and rescue, for sheriff's department, for community development, for county administration, all those, and so many more others. Not that I'm trying to leave anyone out, but all those activities still have to occur in order to provide to the citizens those services. And so, you look at it from that perspective. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of benefit necessarily. I just, as I said, want to bring it back just to have a discussion about it.
Well, that's been the number one complaint. And, I see why that complaint is valid. So the question is, would we act when it's coming for a year? I don't know that answer, but I'm not against it.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Stono.
I talked at great lengths about it last year, Commissioner Revenue's office, and I would definitely like to look into doing it sooner. I mean, that was just one of the biggest nightmares I think this county has gone through. And the other thing is that I would like to have some kind of say in who's going to do the reassessment, because if you have another department hire somebody and say that they possibly didn't get vetted as well as they should have, then we're the ones that the public is going to come to. And I would certainly like to, if there's a board we have to get onto or create for that, but I would certainly want to have something to do with the vetting of the next company that does this for us.
And so this discussion item had two parts, and so that second part obviously is what I would like to discuss as well. So it's the whole, again, speaking with Ms. Lackey, my understanding is that the Commissioner of the Revenue's office is granted to this authority by resolution. Similarly, the board could adopt a new resolution to rescind that, and then at that point it would come back and be under the purview of the Board of Supervisors, and so it would fall to county staff in order to perform those activities and be responsible for the execution of the contract, and then working with the contractor in order to finish out and adopt and accept those findings that they provide to the county. Is that a fair assessment, Ms. Lackey?
Right. So the delegation at some point in time was made to the Commissioner of Revenue to make that selection. So you could have a menu of options where you take back that delegation and the county staff handles the whole process. You could have some kind of, perhaps some kind of in between where you have a selection of panel that includes some folks from the commissioner's office and from the board, but you all could elect that either, the supervising entity, the contract management either comes from Commissioner of Revenue or from county staff.
Thank you, Ms. Lackey. Did anyone else? Ms. Kupka, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would like to see this move forward sooner rather than later. I can tell you my last 2 months as chairman were spent trying to get all of the work product that the vendor was supposed to provide to the commissioner. So I also would support, because I know when the scope of the work in that contract was that vendor was to be supervised by the commissioner's office, and if staff and board personnel are having to spend as much time as we were, we might as well just supervise it. Have our staff, our administrator, whoever, supervise it ourselves.
So you're in favor of bringing the authority back to the board to handle that?
In favor of that as well.
Oh, so you're for both pieces as
For
well?
both, yes.
Executing the reassessment earlier than planned. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Ms. Binder.
So I know that was a big, and still is, a contention about, I still have folks ask me about the process. So I'm not opposed to it. I just want to know what the cost is for the reassessment, because I'm sure 170,000 is probably a little bit more than that at this point. I did ask Ms. Lackey about, is it commonplace the Commissioner of Revenue does it in other localities? Ms. Lackey, you could speak to that, but a lot of localities do it that way, correct?
Right. I think most smaller counties have it through a contract process. I can't speak with 100% certainty the numbers of it that have their Commissioner of Revenue supervise it, but the existence of that statute means that it's not necessarily universal, that it could be handled in a different way.
Right, because I was thinking of whatever we do, we need to change the process of how it was done before, because obviously somewhere something got dropped. So even if we do not do changeover by resolution, the whole process of how those contracts are vetted and then how one is selected and how they are monitored needs to be addressed. And if it was brought back to us, I would want to see is, what kind of staff do we need to do that? How would the selection process work? Because usually we do not select in procurement. The vendor, it usually comes to us and we vote on it. So that would have to all be, the process would have to be planned out.
Mr. Collins, do you have anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. So I'm just going to kind of go down the line and ask on each question individually, just to make sure I have it understood. So I'm going to first ask a resolution to change the authority back so it'd be under the board's purview. Mr. Stonehill.
Yes and yes.
Yes to both for Mr. Stonehill. Ms. Kupka.
Yes to both.
Yes to both. Mr. Collins.
Yes to both.
Yes to both.
I was going into the May because I would like some more information before.
Okay. For both?
For the second part, for the taking it out of the resolution. You said the resolution. First part, yes.
Okay.
Second part,
For the okay.
the resolution
To bring it back to the board.
Yes.
Okay. So, but you're in favor of moving forward with doing a reassessment early?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we have consensus about redoing or investigating, starting the process to do the reassessment earlier. And I believe I'm in favor of also moving forth with the resolution and changing the authority oversight of that activity. So I know Ms. Binder is not on 100% on board. Obviously, we would not, we're not making the motion to move forward with that right now. So it would come back to the board, I assume, as a resolution or something that would have to be adopted as an action item. So if we could move forward with trying to work towards providing that at a future board. Yes, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chair, would you want with the resolution on the change of administration, would you want that to also accompany information on potential costs and potential, like an outline of how maybe you would want to administer that?
I think that would,
staff would be, and I can provide a recommendation, but I would think that, ultimately it's your call as a board.
I would appreciate a recommendation. Would everyone else have? Okay.
That's what I was looking for, is how would we do that?
Tracking. Good question. And yes, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And just to clarify, so the number was 173,000. There are no more costs associated with that. That's a closed out number. It was 163 to do the reassessment, and then to do new construction, there was an additional $10,000 that was put onto that. So that's where that number comes from.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, for the clarification on that. Everyone go, staff, you good with that then? Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to the county administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at one of our recent meetings, I asked you to give me a commitment for the, so this is a deferral from that momentarily, but Ms. Hall indicated that I may have dropped the ball on you guys with the Berkeley group is working obviously on the data center updates and the battery storage and all that. And we committed to the April 25th meeting, but I think I may have not emphasized that they're wanting 2 dates. They have to have 2 dates. And so the second date that was the May 30th, and that is the timeframe around Memorial Day, but they're saying they need the 2 dates. So if you can put that on, it'll be a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. The first one being April 25th, that you agreed that you guys could do that. And then the second one being the 30th of May.
I cannot do the 30th of May. I already know that. So.
Okay. And if I need to then come back to Ms. Hall to find out an alternative date, then it would just push it. It just prolongs it a little bit. It's not like they can't do it. It's just that we would have to come up with another joint date that works. Okay. The other thing is that I am told by Ms. Hall that I need to get from you all, because it has been the pattern, I think, in the past that the boards have given the direction of the kind of localities you wanted to look at, for them to survey. This is the Berkeley group. So the localities, they need 3 localities if they're going to do something to do with battery storage. Either that or I need an affirmation that you're okay if they go and look at the localities. But I think the concern is that you all, or not you all, but other boards in the past had said, well, we didn't want to look at that county, or we didn't want to look at that city. We wanted you to do this thing. And so if you have some on battery storage, if you have some particular counties in the state that you want us to look at,
Just for battery storage is the only.
no, it's also, I need 2 localities for the power plants, and then I need 1 locality for noise. So Warrenton is what they're going to do for noise, but they need 1 more county. So that's why I'm asking.
I think Prince William is relooking at their noise right now, but they're in the process of redoing their noise. And battery storage, I wasn't prepared to come up with that idea right now. I mean, I don't know how many localities in Virginia have large battery storage facilities, because obviously you would want in Virginia, not in another state.
Sure. Can we get a list or get some information on who has battery storage and see what, I mean, who's got that stuff?
The Berkeley crew's probably got a group that they are ready to go with. I think that the concern was they didn't want to do it without you all kind of having a consensus that, yeah, we want to look at Warrenton, or we want to look at Prince William, or we want to look at Loudoun. You know, they don't want to make assumptions on your behalf, I think is what. So I will have Ms. Hall get that information. We'll forward it to you all. If we can do a little doodle poll back, then that would be ideal. Does that make sense?
So we did make some agreements at that meeting with the Berkeley group, correct? Town of Warrenton for
Warrenton's
noise,
1 for noise.
data storage. I mean, data.
Yes, we did
centers
that.
for Prince William and Mecklenburg, I think.
I think it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's some that they have, but they just wanted to make sure there was a good enough list that's going to meet your interests and your satisfaction. I don't think they want to assume anything on your part and then have to then go and do more research on another county that you didn't include, or we would like to have them, but they just, before they start, seriously. So what I'll do is we'll do a doodle poll. I think that's the best way to handle it.
I got one question though on the power plants. So there are different kind of power plants. So that would be, if you were going for nuclear, you'd have Louisa. You know what I mean? Like that's very specialized. So that would be my concern too, is the type of power plant it is.
Okay. All right. So budget schedule, just a reminder, again, we meet on the 9th of this month, this week, 6 p.m. at the Fire Rescue Company 1. We are also going to provide you with a calendar that just basically blocks out your Thursdays, if that's acceptable, for the rest of the time period. Obviously, we know that may change, but I guess we'll wait and see how this meeting goes on Monday, or on Thursday, and then we can decide if you want to have another meeting on the 16th. I know next week is spring break, so some people may not be available. We're early in the process and all that. So, if we have to slide on that meeting, in a week to week thing, we can do that. So we'll have a calendar for you on that. Updates on the communications and community engagement officer. So we've made an offer and we're just waiting to hear. This is a local person who went away to Virginia Tech and has been working in some communities nearby and working with the regional alliance, kind of like the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance. Very skilled, very strong, and we're very excited about the prospects. Most likely would be joining us if everything works out. Most likely would be joining us sometime mid-April. So we're very pleased with that. And the next item is, and I may call on Mr. Clark to just provide you with this, but this is the fireworks program musical act expenses. And I think what Mr. Clark is indicating is And we might want to add it to your budget discussion on the 9th. I know that you can't necessarily pre-approve anything, but essentially he's needing to secure the musical act for the fireworks celebration. And I think he wanted to see if we could just have a discussion about it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Parks and Recreation is prepared to offer our third annual King George Independence Celebration on Saturday, July 8th at Sealston Sports Complex. The event was planned to be part of the tourism budget for fiscal year 2024. But in order to secure a number of event logistics, we need approval of the event as soon as possible. This will be our third Independence Celebration, our fourth overall fireworks event since 2020. The actual expenses of each event have ranged from $34,400 to $36,000. Tonight, we are seeking approval, or as soon as possible, of a budget of not to exceed $40,000 for this year's event. Our most pressing need is actually our fireworks contract. They would have liked that contract back from me probably a month ago for $25,000. That's the same cost that we did in 2021 and 2022. So both independent celebrations. So for the 300th anniversary, we were a $30,000 show. We also need to sign our contract with our entertainer as soon as possible. He is holding a date for us, but plays many, many festivals similar to what we have and would like to either sign with us or free up that. And then we also will need to get our stage and the lighting and sound systems. Those won't be paid until after July 1. But for the fireworks and the entertainer, we need to make deposits. And then this year, the advantage, I don't know, about a half hour ago, maybe 45 minutes ago, you approved our partnership with the way we're working with Family Day. We're going to be able to advertise a lot more thoroughly this year and be able to secure more sponsors and vendors. I anticipate that funding will go back to the tourism fund. So any of those revenues we bring in will offset the cost of the event. So there's the actual straight out cut from the budget. Fireworks of $25,000, lighting and sound $3,000, entertainment. We put in the budget as 2 acts at $2,500. We actually each we have the entertainer we're looking at right now is $3,500, and he actually will bring his own sound. So we actually will be under the $40,000. The stage that we rent, obviously portable toilets, parking attendants, which is actually typically Parks and Recreation staff, and then other support like trash cans. Scott Gasly answered. It's all those catch-all items that we need at the end that it's hard to delineate them out and say, well, I need $30 for this and $50 for water for the band and those kind of things. So that's what we're looking for. And we're looking for approval for the $40,000 in funding for the event drawn from the tourism fund balance and authorization for the county administrator to enter into contracts with American Fireworks and other necessary vendors for the execution of the event, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. I will also be there on Thursday if you all want to sleep on it for 2 days and we can talk about it then.
So you're making this request out of the tourism fund balance.
Because that's where we would have to be right now, because as Mr. Miner said, we're down to $20,000 in the account for the year.
Yep. Well, yes, there is a balance though. So I guess my question is though, has there been an official TAC application?
So because this has been a recurring county event, TAC has expressed to me and Mr. Miner many times of why is Parks and Recreation as a department coming to us with an event? And why isn't it just in the budget? So I initially put it in my budget the last 2 years.
Okay.
But because it's been a tourism event, Ms. Hahn recommended and Mr. Miller agreed to move it to the tourism budget for the year. So I think that would anticipate them adding $40,000 to what would actually be in the budget for the year. But I'm not privy completely to the actual tourism budget. I wish I had grabbed Nick and made him not leave.
Ask my colleagues, do you have any questions?
So do you want us to approve this money before the time we would normally approve it?
Well, I mean, so if I wasn't under the gun with the fireworks company, I could have been about 45 minutes ago with this as a second tourism application for Parks and Recreation. I know the TAC is on board. They love the event, but they did not formally approve an application this year.
So it's annual, so wouldn't you have already got that done?
that's why we put it in the budget recommendation. So the budget recommendation was submitted in January, and that's where thinking we were going to pull it through the regular budget process, but we're not through the regular budget process, and we need to pay a deposit on the fireworks.
And I do know there's not that many fireworks companies in the United States that can put on a show that normally can put on a show besides the very good show they put on. And you have to lock this up ahead of time or they're just going to move on to the next person. And you can't just go and find random fireworks companies. So I do know that's going back for when we were doing the 300th anniversary. So that's just the way it is. And in next year we could do a better process of it, I would say.
Yeah, well, next year for the fireworks company, we will have to rebid. We have used all our renewals with this one.
I think from Ms. Hahn's standpoint, there's going to be some things that she's going to present on Thursday that you could do now with existing fund balance in the 23 fiscal year, as opposed to having it carry over into the new budget. And this could be handled that way. So maybe the thing to do is have this in a more fuller explanation on Thursday night. Is that, we're happy to do it. I'm not trying to, if you're going to approve something tonight, that's fine. I didn't want you to feel the pressure that you have to do it tonight. It's something that we can talk about on Thursday in fuller detail if it's better.
That would probably maybe better so Mr. Collins can ask questions, Ms. Hahn, and the budgetary. You're the one who asked the questions.
Is that if we wait till Thursday, is that going to hang you up with the fireworks or musicians?
Yeah, the musician knows that we maybe not till Thursday, so that Friday morning I'm supposed to talk with him. And the fireworks, they would have liked it back last week, and so as soon as we finish it, I actually have the contract with me that if you were to approve it, I was going to hand it to Mr. Miller and Ms. Lackey to take upstairs and sign by tomorrow morning. But
Okay.
Do we need a motion for?
If you want to move forward, someone will have to make a motion.
Okay, let's do a motion that says to approve $40,000 in funding for the 2023 King George Independence Celebration from the Tourism Fund Balance, and to authorize the county administrator to enter into contracts with American Fireworks Company and other necessary vendors for the execution of the event, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? I'll just ask, just to hammer the point home, you're asking for it to come out of the fund balance now, and so obviously then that means next year you would not ask for, because you were going to ask for it out of the tourism fund for next year, 2024. So then those funds wouldn't be pulled out at that point, and they would just be deposited into the fund balance at that point.
I think you have lost me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What we can do is, if whatever happens here with this motion, we can provide you with that level of detail at Thursday's meeting to give you that, to tell you how Ms. Hahn would propose to do that.
Okay.
Every previous year, this event has been fund balance. It has not been in Nick's budget.
I understand. And Nick told us there's 20,000, I believe, left.
20,000 is in his current budget for this year.
Yes.
For FY24.
Yep.
Or 23. And it was 500 and something was in the balance.
Yes.
So,
So I think if we were to move forward with this tonight, then it's something that Nick should be cognizant of, that it should come out of next year's budget to just track it.
Yeah, and that's the question. If it's presented in the budget, I think it's fine. It'll be in the budget. Hopefully that is what happened, because wasn't in his meeting with Donna. But if that's moved, then we're good to start next year, which is kind of like we had the first year of the event when we actually didn't move, when Mr. Cusenberry was the interim administrator, and we were actually going to do it out on the taxpayer's expense.
Yes.
And then we moved it to tourism at, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after this. I mean, it was like in April that we moved it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It had actually been in the Parks and Rec budget at that point.
So there'll still be a brief at the Thursday meeting with more information.
Yes, sir.
So the outcome of this vote. Okay, so we have a motion properly second, and I have finished with my questions. Anyone else have any discussion or questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Miller, still your administrator.
The only other item that I have is just and it was mentioned by Ms. Bender in her board report, was the participation in the community projects funding presentation that Representative Spanberger's office put on. And they are really aggressive about wanting to help out the localities. And so as I reported at the Service Authority, what we're going to be doing is sitting down as a staff and determining what the best project is. It's a very short turnaround that they're giving us. And their folks are willing to work with us and all that kind of stuff. So these are, again, this is the old phrase earmarks, which were budgetary items that the various representatives, senators would put into the budget and the federal budget, and it would be for the benefit of a particular community. And there's a whole host of opportunities for us. Our rural nature obviously helps us out, but they did indicate very clearly that, you know, the income levels and things like that could hurt. Even though you're rural, you may not be qualifying for some of these things. But so we're going to pool together some ideas, and then if there is something that we're going to put forward, then we will obviously have something that would come back to you in the form of a presentation, and then ultimately, approval, because they usually want to, the governing board approves it. So the other item on there was about what I just talked about earlier, and I will inform Ms. Hall that we need to probably come up with a second meeting.
Actually, I was checking my calendar just to make sure, and I'm okay.
Oh, so May 30th, would that be acceptable to do the joint meeting? And then the other item on there again, would just be that I will do we'll have a doodle poll about the communities. Yes.
I think we're okay for the 30th.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Then I believe we do have a motion.
I move that King George County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting for one, discussion of Sedgwick Crossing litigation pursuant to State Code Section 2.23711A7 for consultation or briefing with legal counsel regarding actual litigation, and State Code Section 2.23711A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters. And two, discussion of disposition of surplus properties or potential property acquisitions pursuant to State Code Section 2.23711A3 for discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, or of the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. I invite the county administrator, county attorney, assistant county attorney, because they are deemed necessary, or their presence will be reasonably aid the board in consideration of the topics to be discussed pursuant to State Code Section 2.23712F.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. We have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. We are in closed session.
certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by Virginia law, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convened the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. We will go by roll call certification. Ms. Bender?
So certify.
Mr. Collins?
Certify.
Mrs. Kupka?
So certify.
Mr. Stonehill?
So certified.
Chair so certifies. We are back in open session. Any other business to bring before the board? If someone would like to entertain a motion, just remember we're adjourning to fire station, not to the boardroom.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to March 9th, 2023, 6 p.m. at Company 1.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.